This is Prime Sports NASCAR on Prime Sports Network. Greg DePalma, CJ Radoon, back together again. Eric is at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, loving life right now. He's probably in some enclosure with 5 or 6 drivers, so I'm sure he's having a lot of fun. How's everything going there at the Brickyard? You've been following all the action because they qualified for like 8 weeks.
They qualified just last weekend, so they had 2 days of qualifying. I've been paying attention. Took part in a couple of the press conferences they've had this week. Unfortunately, today was media day. I wasn't able to make any of it, but I did see some of Eric's pictures of him being there. It was an enclosed space with a kind of fold-out table and just a handful of people at a time. And they even had a mask on the Borg Warner Trophy guy, which I thought was very ironic because since 1911, I think however long that trophy has been around, he's never had underwear or pants on. But now, because of the virus, they made a checkered flag mask for him. So I thought that was a great thing.
Okay, yes, that's what we need. Anything that can remind us of this god awful year of 2020. All right, let's we'll talk IndyCar tomorrow. Eric will be live from the Speedway, so we've got IndyCar coverage on Friday. We'll have the show available on demand on this YouTube channel probably by about 4 o'clock. So, between 4 and 5, just to let everybody know. And that's why you want to subscribe to the channel, because as soon as these shows are available, they pop up right there on your page. Okay, it's NASCAR, though. Before we get into what happened, I was going to start the show. I was thinking of starting the show something like this. Oh. Is it over? I mean, CJ, I don't ever want to see them race on that track again unless they make some serious changes. They can't do that to us anymore. It made me long for Pocono.
Yeah, it was really bad, and the thing that made it probably even worse was that it had the potential to be great. Another road course, a fast road course, an unknown road course, all these different variables going into it had every opportunity to make it exciting. And I got the inclination that it just wasn't going to be with the Xfinity race the day before. I was hopeful that
was a bad warning sign.
That was definitely the bad omen leading into Sunday, and oh my gosh, I probably got up and walked away 6 or 7 times. It was so predictable. It was so bad. There was no real racing in it. I couldn't. There was just Elliott had a 10-second lead, and it was clear that he was going to win. There was no strategy that was going to solve it. And even Kyle Busch, and I'm sure it wasn't intentional. I'm sure it wasn't nefarious. But when you got 2 teammates that have an impossible job to do to track down streaking Chase Elliott, who's got a 10-second gap, you're already out of the race. You're going to go and bring out a caution so that your 2 teammates can get one more shot. I thought that was a little bit staged. I'm sure it wasn't, but it very well played out. And even that didn't matter. Elliott had the perfect restart, and by the time he even got close to turn 1, he was 3 car lengths ahead of Hamlin and was gone. There was no hope. It was awful. Never do it again.
And what was the idea with the straightaway? I mean, what is that for? I mean, I can understand hey, you know what? If you want to have it for the entire length of the track, maybe there's some way one driver can catch the other driver, but it's just not long enough. It's just
right.
That should be more twisting and turning.
Agreed.
Not straight away.
Oh, the draft is going to come into play here. No. It didn't. It was, it was just really bad.
Yeah,
really bad. Of mine, and the Xfinity race the day before was worse.
Yes. A friend of mine who is a big F1 fan, and he this is the kind of racing he loves. He told me how much he liked it. And I said, well, first of all, that's
He did.
that's because he doesn't really watch NASCAR. So he really doesn't know much about the drivers. So he has no rooting interest for
Yeah.
drivers. He's not wagering on the race. He's got nothing all he cares about is just that type of racing. And it's like that still was of interest to him. Especially now, the other thing that he even was hoping for, we all were hoping for, was rain. And
Yes.
just when it looked like it was going to get ready to rain, NASCAR did the old chicken out as usual. It was predictable. Oh, there's some lightning in the area. So we've got no driving in the rain because there's lightning. So we didn't even get driving in the rain, which would have saved the race if we could have had a good half hour of driving in the rain.
I agree. Completely agree. And in all fairness to your friend that likes F1, I guess thinking back to this season and past seasons with as predictable as Formula One has been and as boring as it's been, I can see why this race on Sunday he would find that exciting, because if those are the only two things that he's watching, he's missing out on some really good racing elsewhere in the world.
I think, because again, I don't know what else. A lot of those types of, again, give you some of the other racing that is.
I think some of the best racing right now certainly is MotoGP, and then from there, sports cars. So you've got the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Usually that's held in June. It's going to be held in September this year. The sports cars, that's some really good racing throughout the field. I think you can see that. IndyCar has definitely stepped up its game, and then when you get the good tracks on NASCAR, there's not much that beats that either.
Yeah.
But those would be the hierarchy, I would say, right now of great racing. MotoGP just has passes throughout the field nonstop throughout the entire race. It's really exciting to watch. And then, sports cars are probably a close second there, at least in terms of four-wheeled machines. I would put them at the top.
What was the reaction from the drivers or the media, even though we know the media is always going to talk about how wonderful the racing was and how exciting it was and all that stuff? But did we get any sort of unbiased reaction?
I didn't hear any unbiased reaction, put it that way. I heard a lot of relief from people afterward, from the driver's side, and then I heard a lot of rah, rah, rah from the typical outlets that you're going to get it. Like, oh, wasn't that great? An unknown track and something different. NASCAR really going out on the ledge. And such a, Chase Elliott, I don't know how many times they said these are the best race car drivers in the world. They're on this type of course. I'm sorry, but they're not. And it showed. I mean, look how many cautions there were in Xfinity and how strung out the field was. It wasn't competitive. You're right. They have to do some serious track changes if they do it again. But preferably they just don't do it again.
Was the only reason they did this was because of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they had to redo all the scheduling. They weren't going to be able to go all the way out to the West Coast again. They weren't going up to New York. Obviously, we all know what's been going on in New York from the virus standpoint. They're basically on lockdown. So you're not going to have a traveling circus come to town there. So in order to get the road courses in, they used Daytona, and we've got Charlotte coming up here in the playoffs.
All right. Well, we have Dover, double Dover. And that may be a good thing, but chances are it's not. Because these double races have been terrible.
Bad to bad.
Yeah. The double race. Well, then again, I mean, nothing could be any worse than what we just saw on Sunday.
That's true. That's true.
But these double races have been terrible. And I think we have to blame the tracks more than back-to-back racing.
Yes.
It's just these aren't good tracks. So you get a typically pretty boring race, and then they decide, well, let's just go do it again in 24 hours. So you're going to get another boring race, and you're going to get very similar results. And I think that's what we've learned. If anything, handicapping-wise, if there's a dominating car or two on Saturday, no matter what the odds are, you're always going to get at least 2-1 on even the heavy favorite. And that actually might be a bargain for us on Sunday with this racing, because that's probably the way to go. I'm not even fooling around here. If one driver dominates and wins on Saturday, and that driver's 2-1 on Sunday, I might just put all $100 on just that driver on Sunday.
Oh, I would absolutely do it. I'm not going to bite on Kevin Harvick being 2-1 on Saturday just because I want to see how things play out. So I spread my money
Well,
around
actually,
a little bit more.
he since we did the report, his odds on one sports book is actually close to 4-1, believe it or not. But he's
Oh,
three
really?
to one on our
I'd take
report.
that. I'd take that, but earlier in the week where he was, no, and I agree. If whoever you see that is fast on Saturday, they're going to be fast again on Sunday. We've seen that every single time they've had a doubleheader. This is a track where track position matters. So the guys that are starting up front are the fastest guys anyway. They're going to have the track position. They're going to have their strategies nailed down. They've got their setups nailed down. So whoever you see run it on Saturday, the top two, I would say go with them. And if there's one person that just comes out and completely dominates it, unless it's some completely obscene fluke, I would go ahead and go with them on Sunday all in. I agree.
Yeah, if you look at it, there have been no wins outside the top 15 starting position over the last 13 races at Dover. So you
Yep.
don't want to start too far outside the top 15. And this is not a race to wager on Penske. Penske has never won at this racetrack. Harvick is the only Ford driver to win here in the last 17 races, and he no longer drives a Ford. Or does he?
Yeah. Harvick drives a Ford.
No, he does drive. He just drives for the. Is he still with the same team as he's been the last several years?
Stewart-Haas. Yep.
Okay.
So
If you're
he is
thinking
still
of
with
someone else.
Stewart-Haas. Yep. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a track position track, and lately it's kind of been Toyota's playground. Toyota and Chevy taking the mantle there, which is surprising because maybe we'll get a different result this week. I wouldn't necessarily count Ford out just because they haven't won recently, because Kevin Harvick's been super dominant
Harvick's the one
over recent weeks. And even Keselowski. So look back. This is another 1 mile oval. It's a little bit different in terms of it's got concrete and more of a straight line banking versus a progressive banking. But look at what happened in Miami. So Keselowski was pretty good there. Maybe he comes in and steals one. I wouldn't completely write him off.
Well, Harvick, Eric's the only one that went with Harvick this week. Again, he's 3-1 along with Truex. Now you went with Truex. He's your top pick.
Yes.
I basically put money on Truex to get my money back to break even. But Eric was the only one to go with Harvick. He put half his money on Harvick and half his money on Truex. So he's kind of doing the strategy that we're already thinking of doing for Sunday. He's doing for Saturday. And again, Harvick and Truex are 3-1. And I completely understand where he's going. Harvick has 7 top 10s in the last 10. 5 top 5s, a runner-up and 2 wins. He has led 1,298 laps in his last 12 races at Dover. That's an average of 108 laps a race. But last year, even though he finished 4th in both races, he only led a combined 1 lap. So, and there have been some changes, of course, in the last year or two. That is the only reason that I just decided, maybe I'll wait till Sunday on Harvick. As far as Truex, he's finished in 3rd place for 5 straight races. I've never seen anything like it. At this track, he's got 10 top 10s in his last 12, 6 top 5s, runner-up, 2 wins. He won last May, leading 132 laps. He was 2nd last October, and he'll be starting 3rd, where Harvick will be starting 10th.
Yeah, Harvick with the starting spot, and plus exactly as you pointed out, the last 2 races last year he led 1 lap. He was a top 5 car, whereas Truex and others came out and dominated. 132 laps, as you said, for Truex in his win, and then he finished 2nd in the fall race. So I think Toyota's underpowered. I think we've been hearing that all season. We've talked about it over and over, but Truex has been within shouting distance every single time, and this is a better track for them as well. So with Hamlin and Truex both starting 2 and 3 inside the top 3 behind Chase Elliott, who's on pole, I just think that they're a better bet. And if Harvick maybe if Harvick squeaks out the win, which he is still likely or capable of doing, I should say. Maybe his odds won't be as dramatically bad on Sunday, but I have a feeling whoever ends up winning Saturday is going to be a 2-1 number on Sunday. So like you, I just opted to go save my Harvick play till Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, so look, we all, the only driver we have all taken is Truex. So we all have money on Truex, and you and I have decided to wait on Harvick possibly for Sunday. Can't imagine he's not going to finish in the top 5 again, and probably even lead some laps. And he could dominate the race. It's very well possible. He led 355 in his 2015 win, 286 in his 2018 race when he finished 6th, 223 in 2014 when he finished 13th, and 201 in his 2018 win. So that's
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but again, and we've talked about this before, just last week actually. Unless you're going to do what Eric did, you can't pick and choose which way you're going to go, unless you've got some other drivers that you have in mind. And we're going to get to, I think, the driver we both feel might be the guy, and that's Denny Hamlin. And that's why I said, you know what? See, if I didn't feel confident that Elliott and Hamlin were really good second options behind Harvick and Truex, I might have a different strategy, and maybe I'd be more inclined to do similar to what Eric's doing. But when I look at Hamlin and Elliott, 5-1 Elliott, 6-1 Hamlin. Elliott, he has his win last week. He also had the win at the All-Star race. Besides those 2 wins, which were in these weird races, weird formats, he hasn't won much for a few months, but he was getting better recently. That was a good sign. And this is also a shorter racetrack, like what we saw last week and like he's done before. He's pretty good in the short track style. He's been phenomenal here. 6 top 5s in 8 races with a win in 2018. He'll be on the pole. He led 145 laps last May from the pole. And even better, Hamlin, who we both have money on, even though he's never won here, he led 218 laps from the pole last October and finished 5th. Keep in mind, he led 276 laps in his previous 27 races at Dover. That's how impressive the performance was from Hamlin. The last time he was at this racetrack, he's been 6th or better in his last 5 races this year, including 3 runner-ups and a win. And you're getting 6-1 odds. You're getting double the odds of Harvick and Truex. That's the reason why he's my top pick this week on Saturday, and why I'm assuming he's your second pick on Saturday.
Yeah, I really like Hamlin this week. He and Harvick have Hamlin's come out equally on top. Harvick's got more wins, but that's, it is what it is. Hamlin has he's got it here. 218 laps led, as you said, in the fall race here from pole. Finished 5th. He probably would have been in the top 5 in the spring as well. Ended up finishing 21st. I think he's a fantastic choice at those odds, and you'd be crazy not to go with him, at least on Saturday. Maybe he fizzles out Saturday and you don't take him on Sunday. Maybe he dominates on Saturday and you do take him Sunday. One way or the other, I think Saturday is probably the way you're going to go. You're probably not going to get 6-1 odds or whatever it is for him.
What would be better for us is if Denny Hamlin wins and does look impressive on Saturday, and then because let's say Harvick top 5, Truex top 5, they are still going to be very low odds. Hamlin's odds are not going to go down crazy. So you're still going to be able to get Hamlin 3 or 4-1 at the worst on Sunday, which I'd probably go right back on Hamlin, like we just said, like we just talked about, So that would be the dream scenario for you and I, or anyone that takes Hamlin on Saturday.
Completely agree. You're right. I don't think I think Truex or Harvick, probably more likely Harvick goes to a 2-1, but I think Hamlin, even if he comes out and wins, probably more like a 3-1 type of role. I would have liked to have gone with Chase Elliott. The reason I didn't, he's good at this track. Obviously, he's got the win. But winning back-to-back is
Sure.
tough, especially when it's been so long for him. So he's been in a slump. You're right. He's been getting better, and he's coming to the tracks that he is better at. But it's been so long for him to just bounce back and have back-to-back wins. That was kind of the only reason why I felt like I would give him another day. Maybe he comes out really strong on Saturday again. It's a doubleheader. You have the opportunity to go back to him on Sunday. He's another
That's
one
right.
that even if he comes in and wins, he's not going to come all the way down to a 2-1 like a Harvick would if he went out and dominated. So
Yeah, and Elliott, if he does not win, and like you said, he has a good
he's
performance, he
be a
leads some
bargain.
laps, then maybe we can go at Elliott on
Yep,
Sunday, and
exactly
that
right.
wouldn't be a.
And you'll get good
He
odds
would
on
be
him.
correct, yeah. And by the way, I am surprised that when you take a look at our futures, that Elliott is the third choice. And it's sort of like the standings in a way. It's like you get the standings because the way the standings are, you do well early in the season. It's going to buy you a lot of time to hang around in the top 5 or top 6, which is what happened with Chase until picking up the win last week. But still, for him to be the third choice, he hasn't been driving the last couple of months like he's a playoff driver right now. We know he's got the talent to
No.
get it going again, but he's not the
Yeah.
he's not six. I mean, why would you go with 6-1 with Chase Elliott unless, of course, you had to strategy wise, like that's kind of like I'm sure that's why both of us went with Elliott in that respect because we're looking at a driver at 6-1. That what happens if he does go out and win this weekend? Those odds are going to go even lower. And so maybe it's in our best interest to make sure we get him at 6-1. But other than that, if I was starting off and I had no money invested in
No.
futures, I'm not starting off with Chase Elliott.
No, completely agree. It is reminiscent of the speed that he had earlier in the year. He and Blaney were the two fastest cars for the first third of the season. Both of them have kind of tailed off. I still think both of them are going to rediscover their form. Elliott may already be starting to do that. Blaney had a difficult race last week. He's not known as a road course guy. He blew the chicane on after late in the race, so he ended up losing a ton of track position and falling back there. But I think with Penske, with Hendrick, they're two extremely coordinated, well drilled teams, lots of resources, great strategy. These guys are going to find their form as we get into the playoffs, and we've seen both of them be able to figure out how to survive through these cutoff rounds. So they're going to make it a long way. And you better have something on him while you're getting 6-1 odds.
Kozlowski, you were mentioning him. He is your third choice. Kozlowski has a 2012 win here, typical Kozlowski fashion, only leading 14 laps in that race. He doesn't have a top 5 though in his last 6 races at Dover. He's cooled off his last 2 races, the last couple of weeks. But Brett Kozlowski is getting 12-1 odds.
Yep, and I went with him primarily because of Miami. So another 1 mile track, as I talked about, kind of similar in configuration, not tremendously similar, but Brad's a guy that can come out on these types of tracks. Darlington too, I would put it in there as well, just because of the surface and the way you got the corners kind of at either end. What does concern me about Keselowski is the fact that he hasn't finished inside the top 10 in his last 3 races at this track in particular. However, he did lead 58 laps in this race in 2019 in the spring race before he finished 12th. And then the spring race in 2018, he led 108 laps. So I think that he can come out, he can dominate if he's got the right setup. So he was kind of more of an insurance play for me versus the other ones, but I still think he's got potential.
Now, the other 2 Penske drivers, Blaney 10-1, Logano 16-1. This is the first time. Not only, I mean, we have usually all taken Blaney as the only driver that we've agreed upon every week. Done that quite a bit lately. Not only are we not all taking him this week together, but we're not taking. Nobody's taking him. So maybe that means Blaney will win this week. But he's 10-1.
Hopefully.
Yeah, he's 10-1, and he's starting 20th. Those are 2 bad signs. Starting 20th in this race is not good.
It's a very poor starting position. That's based on that one chicane that he blew at the end of the race last week. But he's only got 2 top 10s here too.
Yeah.
His next finish after that was 11th. His last top 10 was the spring of 2018. Dropped out the fall race this year or last year because of a suspension issue. He hasn't shown great speed at this track. What would be encouraging to see from Blaney is if he comes out and has a good finish, has a top 5, and stays there throughout the race, because then you know that his program is coming together as the playoffs approach and he's starting to rediscover his speed. And that would be the point in which you want to start going for him again in the futures.
And his teammate Joey Logano at 16-1 only has one top 5 in his last 10 races at Dover. He's led 26 laps in 22 races at Dover. And if you take a look at it on the flip side, he does have 5 top 10s in his last 6 races overall with 3 top 5s. So he's starting to pick up, which is a good sign. And now you didn't take him this week in futures. I did, and Eric did, but you decided no futures, but you'll take the race on Saturday.
Yep. Again, 3rd and 7th, 2018 fall race, and then spring of 2019 led 6 laps and 16 laps respectively, starting 5th. So this is a good starting position for him. If you look at his qualifying record throughout the track, plus the fact that he's been picking it up a little bit more weekly, I see him more as a stage winner. And if he can continue winning those stages, putting himself in position, start sacrificing for the end, making those strategy calls like the Truexes, the Hamlins, the Harvicks are doing, I think he's going to be in with a shout to win races. Again, not my top pick, but again, kind of an insurance type of play like a Keselowski.
Now, as far as some of the other Fords, Almirola 18-1. He's starting to cool off a little bit, but as far as this track is concerned, he's had 2 moments at this track. He finished 5th in both races in 2015, and he led 64 laps in the October race in 2018, and that's it. That's all. That's his history basically at Dover. But you decided to go with one of the other Fords. You went with DiBenedetto. You put a few bucks on DiBenedetto at 40-1. You decided to skip Clint Boyer at 28-1, another Ford. DiBenedetto finished 7th here last October. Meanwhile, Boyer does not have a top 5 in his last 14 races on the season, and he has never won at this racetrack in 28 races. So overall, though, DiBenedetto, yes. Boyer, Almirola, no.
Correct. Almirola, he's just kind of a throwaway at this track. Like you said, he's just got that one kind of anomaly of those 2 races together, which ironically were back-to-back, and then really hasn't done anything there since. But DiBenedetto surprised me. So when I was looking for this spot in my selections on who I was going to choose for Saturday, Boyer was on my mind, and I went and looked at Boyer. And then DiBenedetto was also on my mind, and I went and looked at DiBenedetto. To see DiBenedetto, who was not even a top 20 car, he had 1 top 20 finish all the way at this track, all the way up until the fall of last year, and ends up finishing 7th. He finished 7th from the 20th starting position. And then you look at how consistently he's been in the top 10 in the past couple of weeks. He's going to have something that's falling his way at some point or another. He's showing that he's got what it takes to be a top 10, top 5 car each and every week. I wouldn't put it past him to be in the top 5 with a shot at winning. I wouldn't have expected him to be as strong as he was last week at the boring Daytona road course either. So I think he's got momentum on his side. He's settled in with this team. He's figured out what he needs to do with them. He's getting the results, and I think he's going to start inching forward. So DiBenedetto got the edge over Boyer in my mind for those reasons.
And DiBenedetto, it's interesting, just 1 top 5 since Vegas. But as you said, he's been consistently in the top 10 over the last 6 to 8 races. The problem is finishing. He's having a hard time in that last stage getting it done.
Yes.
And that's why he hasn't had a top 5 since the first few weeks of the season, but still a very impressive season so far for DiBenedetto. And he's 40-1. That's a big number. So why
that was a big driver as well.
Yeah. The Bush brothers, Kurt 33-1, Kyle 12-1. Who would have thought that we'd be talking about Kyle Busch at 12-1 at this time of the season? Last week, I mean, it's always something with Kyle Busch. Last week, he gets off to a good start. Looks like he has one of the best cars. You're figuring, okay, maybe Kyle Busch, and then he has a problem, and it's all over. That's just the way it's been for Kyle Busch this season. And it's interesting, but since we don't have the May October racing, uh, these trends really don't matter because he was for 6 straight years he was always doing better in the October race. May no good, October yes, and that really doesn't matter because we got a whole weekend thing. Plus he's starting 22nd, so I mean he's only led 22 laps in the last 4 races here anyway. I mean, who would touch Kyle Busch this week? Kurt Busch at 33-1. The odds are better, but he's only led 11 laps in his last 16 races, and he only has one top 5 in his last 15 races on the season.
Yeah, Kyle scares me for all the reasons that you went through. Wouldn't touch him. If you were going to take him, it probably would have been last week. Kurt, I wonder what's happened with him. I'm kind of at a loss because he looked like he was on the edge of making it into one of the top 5 guys at the beginning of the season, but he's really cooled off and really hasn't really been around. He's been consistent, but he's not been a top 5 kind of guy. We haven't been talking about him on a weekly basis or during the races in coming up. And when you come to a track where he's got one win, but his average finish over 39 starts is 17.6, and looking back over his history at this track, the only reason it's 17.6 and not 20 something is because of he's had the 2 top 5s and a 9th place finish in the last 4 races over the past 2 years. But like you said, that only came with 3 laps led. So I think, he's shown since this summer that he can come up and lead, 3 to 5 laps.
Yeah.
But again, he's not a car that's there at the end. And I don't think he's going to be on Saturday. Either he just doesn't have the speed, he's missing something, he's got to figure out what it takes to be able to pull that forward, and his teammate sure as heck isn't helping him do anything either.
And his other teammate, maybe things would be better if he had Kyle Larson still racing.
Yep.
And Tony Stewart just came out and talked about how he thinks Kyle Larson has paid his dues. It's time to reinstate him. I'm not sure Tony has been paying attention to what's going on in the country.
Well, look at who's saying it though.
So
it's Tony Stewart. I mean, if there's anybody who's had more chances and begged for forgiveness more frequently, it's probably Tony Stewart.
Yeah, because, again, I still think though. I mean, it's one of those things that if there's going to be a time, maybe something will happen this offseason. Things will cool down after the election. Maybe we will see Kyle Larson next year. Who knows? But I'd still like to we need to see Kyle Larson before he ever does return. It has to happen. He has to sit in front of a pool of reporters and answer a lot of questions, because I still don't really get what really happened and transpired and what was going through his head. I can forgive him completely if I hear the explanation properly. I just don't really understand what happened. And then you get the craziness of what just took place with the Cincinnati Reds announcer, which to me is worse, because I say to myself, even if my mic is not on, if I'm using that kind of language, what kind of either person am I, or exactly what's going on with myself? But Larson, I think we need a lot of answers. NASCAR, they need to make sure, and maybe what needs to happen is, what would be best is before NASCAR reinstates him, off season, set up a press conference. Let's have the media talk and grill Kyle Larson first. Then let's get some polls out there. Let's get some reactions. Then NASCAR can decide what to do.
Yeah, I don't, aside from losing his job, which is a big. And first, let me go back on Tony Stewart. I absolutely love Tony
I
Stewart,
do too.
but
Yes.
he's had a lot of controversy in his time. So it's great for Kyle Larson to have somebody like Tony Stewart who's kind of been through this situation on his side. And I do agree. I think we will eventually Kyle Larson back, but he has not, aside from losing his job and being kind of kicked out of the series, he hasn't paid his price yet. He hasn't really done it. I mean, he's still racing. He's going out. He's winning
Yeah.
races. He's still doing everything that he would otherwise normally do, just not with the Cup Series.
How much money does he make
And you,
doing that?
I'm sure he makes a decent living at the same time, but you're right. He hasn't faced the public, and the times that he has faced the public, the very few things that has said in terms of explanation has just been a moment of stupidity, and
That
that
doesn't
sounds
cover it.
kind of. Exactly. That's very hollow. Like, what are you doing about it? A moment of stupidity, and that's the thing that comes to the top of your head, and that's how you react to a video game. What's going to happen when it matters, when it's in a championship fight? And you're right. He's got to pay his price with the public in some form or fashion and give some kind of real concrete evidence as to maybe it was just a momentary lapse of judgment or whatever. But what have you done then to get better? What have you done to make sure it doesn't happen again? What have you done to make the world a better place? Things of that nature. And so for NASCAR to rightly say, we've got to sit down and talk with him and figure out what that path to reinstatement looks like, I think is the right thing to do. But it's got to have some kind of public element. He's got to have his walk of shame, I guess.
All right. And wrapping up, I had 3 more picks. 2 of them were Hendrick drivers, and they did not. Well, actually, I had 3 Hendrick drivers in this race. The only one I did not take was Bowman. He's still looking for his first top 5 since Darlington, even though he finished second and third at this track last year, which is very good. The problem I have with Bowman is when I think of someone like Bowman, a young, inexperienced driver still, and I think of the no top 5 since Darlington, he already has a win this season. I'm sorry, I just can't see Alex Bowman with a second win. I just can't.
No.
Not unless he starts hitting some top 5s again. So
Agreed.
I can't go there. And 22-1 is no major bargain. So I can't go there. But I did go with Jimmy Johnson, just like you did. And also, I went with William Byron. And this is interesting, of course, because the Byron Jimmy Johnson duel in the playoff standings, that's really the only dramatic deal we have going on with the playoff standings. And it would be interesting to see what would happen if Jimmy Johnson could come out and win a race and put William Byron on the outside.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? It's interesting that those two are the ones that are battling it out. I looked at Bowman as well, but for the same reasons. Just he was good here last year, and he has the potential to be good, but he has completely zero consistency when it comes to a week to week kind of basis when you're looking at his performances, and hasn't had the top finish. He's got to figure out how to get consistent top 10s every single week and then begin working those into top 5s. Jimmy Johnson, on the other hand, has been showing speed.
Yep.
He's kind of fallen into that Kyle Busch category where, he's up there and, okay, maybe this is a time, and then something happens, whether it's somebody else's mistake or something mechanical ends up breaking on him. It's just he's had terrible luck, but he's definitely had the speed. And I think Byron, he's another one of the ones that I would put in the category with Blaney and Elliott when it comes to the playoff picture. He's another one that's figured out how to stick around through these elimination rounds. So if he can find his way in with a win, or at least points his way in, he's going to be around for a couple of rounds in these playoffs, and he's going to be hard to beat, despite the fact that he's sitting 16th and on the bubble right now. But if Jimmy Johnson comes in and wins it, that puts Byron out and puts DiBenedetto in the hot seat. Yep. And then I would say that Byron could probably come back and win a race at some point or another to be able to see himself through, whether it's guaranteeing himself a spot in the playoffs or making sure that he advances to the next round of the playoffs.
And what I like about Johnson is his career at Dover has been incredible. 11 wins, yep. Over 3,000 laps led. And even lately, he's done pretty well there, considering He's struggled over the recent years, and he starts sixth. So that's a very good starting position for Jimmy. I also went a couple of bucks with Bell, looking for his first Cup win, 66-1. I said, heck, why not? Maybe that, because if you take a look at his Xfinity Series history at Dover, it's been fantastic. He's got 2 wins in 4 races. So he knows how to race at this track. And if there is a luck situation, Bell's my luck driver this week. The only other drivers to mention would be Jones, who is in big trouble right now for the playoffs, and the other rookies, Reddick and Custer. And then Austin Dillon, does he return this week?
That's a good question. I haven't heard if he has passed his tests yet or not. I'm going to have to look that up. That was not a headline that I had seen. So I don't even know if he's taken his test yet, to be honest with you.
He's your fantasy driver. And it actually benefited for you last week.
Yes. I was happy when I saw Kaz Gralla was his substitute because I know Kaz Gralla is going to rip him apart on the road courses.
Yeah. So you benefited from him missing last week. This week, probably not. But hopefully Dillon gets back out there and he's okay. Who would you take out of Jones, Reddick, Jones, Reddick, Bell, or Custer?
Probably Bell, to be honest with you. I think that's a good shot. He's shown some good speed. He should have done better in Daytona. Had a couple of issues on the road course, but he's also been very fast on the ovals as well. So he's been one that's been itching or scratching at the surface, being able to come up. I think Jones might be defeated at this point. He
needs a win.
Bit too far out. I don't think. Yeah, he has to win. And when the pressure is on to get a win, probably the only chance it's going to happen is going to be like a Talladega or a Daytona, which we do have coming up. But until then, probably not going to be very high on Jones. So I think Bell is the right choice. He was fast, as I said, last week as well, and he's been fast on the ovals. So he just needs to pull it together. And like you said, if there's a luck situation at the end of the race, he's likely to be in there with a shout for sure.
Yeah, Jones does have a win in the Xfinity Series. He's led 200 laps in that series. Hasn't led a lap in the Cup Series, though, in 6 races. Reddick has a couple top 5s in 5 Xfinity races. And Custer has 4 top 5s and a win in 6 Xfinity races, leading 224 laps. But Custer has lost his mojo over his last several races ever since I picked him up on my fantasy team. So, anyway, no correlation. All right, next week, we end the regular season with Daytona. What a great decision. I'm shocked that NASCAR had the cojones to put the everything on the line in the regular season to Daytona, but it was a great decision.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, especially if regardless of what it is, that cut line battle for the playoffs, whether it's Byron and Johnson or
doesn't matter.
Whatever it is,
not a points race now. It's a wins race.
Exactly right, and that's exactly what you want at these 2 tracks. So yeah, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be under the lights. Should be great for all the marbles. It's going to be a good one. But we've got to get through Dover first.
That won't be too hard though. So we'll wrap up Dover hopefully with Eric on Monday. It all depends on his schedule, being at the Brickyard. Don't forget, we'll be back tomorrow to preview the Indy 500 on our IndyCar report coverage, and then we'll be back to preview the final race of the regular season, more than likely on Thursday of next week, give or take a day, depending on our schedules. But that's when we'll see you next, IndyCar fans and auto racing fans in general. We'll see you tomorrow with more on the Indy 500. And CJ, rotowire.com, quickly, what are you going to be doing there?
Rotowire.com. We've got fantasy previews for the trucks and then both doubleheaders for Xfinity and Cup at Dover on rotowire.com.
DJ, appreciate it. Talk to you on this show next week.
Sounds good. Thanks.